sometimes it's easy to take stable physics for granted. Space and time being consistent things in the physical world are suddenly no longer consistent things. We have faced everything from comics avatars being, for some reason, all extremely dark skinned, so it looks like every white person's in blackface. We have had avatars facing one direction when they think they're facing another direction. So in order to talk to the audience, they have to be backwards. We have had avatars show up invisible, which is funny when you see a floating microphone for about a minute, and then you're kind of hoping to see the comic, and an invisible heckler is really tough to deal with.
Explosion. Good morning, everyone. This is your host, Yawer, and Mahush and Nabil of Cambrian Explosion, here to bring you another exciting episode. This time with Simon, who is joining us today as a special guest. We're very excited to discuss and talk about what Simon does in the world of VR theater. Simon, it's great to meet you. Do you want to say a couple of words about what you do?
Thank you. Yes, my name is Simon. I'm a longtime digital marketing professional for about 15 years now, but a creative person on the side, do a lot of music and comedy. And then this all came to a head a couple of years ago when a longtime professional comedian friend of mine who had started a Zoom comedy club during the pandemic invited me to join his operation and start a new company together to create a virtual comedy theater in virtual reality, not just on Zoom, but in virtual reality for a more immersive experience. And since, I guess, spring of 2022, I've been doing that as my side or second company.
Tell me a little bit about how, as a user, who are the users, who comes to your shows? How is it different from an in-person?
Sure. So I'd say one of our guiding philosophies with all of what we're doing is to, as much as possible, try to recreate the physical world experience in a virtual environment to deliver on a real promise of online comedy in a way that is immersive enough to have a true comedy experience that is crowd-driven in a lot of ways. Zoom is okay for comedy, but we believe that, and we've achieved a way to create that experience and have, especially with professionals coming in, a way to create that kind of experience that they would otherwise not be able to get.
Yeah, I have a question. So in my head, I'm thinking about somebody joining into one of these sessions, and in my head, something like a Charlie Chaplin scene kind of plays out, where someone's with their VR goggles running around, bumping into things, or trying to relax while watching the show. So tell me about how you kind of set this up and what the reaction was, and how people kind of really got into it, because that's different than what's in my head right now.
So the VR world, broadly speaking, is actually quite a varied landscape. So depending on the platform that you're on, the technology that you're using, and the app that you're in, physical, the hardware and software, can have a very different experience. So there is a platform that existed before the one that I'm on. I'm on Meta's Horizon Worlds platform. Facebook, Meta, they made their own virtual reality social metaverse called Horizon Worlds, and that's where I operate. I chose that spot because, we chose that spot because it is connected to Facebook, has a large social network attached off the back of it that we felt would be a great way to grow. And with Mark Zuckerberg investing as much as he was, and the headset associated with it being the most popular widespread headset, we felt like that was the best way to reach a lot of people and build community. But that said, the virtual reality technology has existed before what Mark Zuckerberg did. He's like saying, he's acting like he created the metaverse, when really there's this platform, VR Chat, that existed years before that skews younger, that skews much more technologically advanced. They're all PC VR based, which is much more powerful than the standalone headsets that are available. So I'll take a step back and explain technology a little bit. The Quest 2 headset, Meta's Quest 2 headset, Meta bought out Oculus, which was a company that did virtual reality headsets. It was the first. real powerful standalone headset where you didn't have to have a PC to connect to actually experience virtual reality. And as a result, you have a lot of people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, who are never gamers, who are never had an advanced PC, who are engaging in this very advanced technology and are able to interact with it and learn it from the start because it's user friendly enough. And so in our shows, we have people who are experiencing virtual reality for the first time, but in a lot of ways, they're not technologically advanced people, and they still do figure it out. We have, I think, the oldest person in our stand-up comedy classes is 63, and she's not a PC gamer, but that platform and the app definitely could attract just about anybody, and so then there is an onboarding process into VR in general, which takes some getting used to. And it's a bit of trying to explain what the Matrix is. You kind of get into it and understand really what it is to be fully immersed. And then from there, it's sort of really finding your VR legs, getting comfortable, seeing if it makes you queasy or not. Most people don't. And then adapting to whatever world you're in and seeing how it operates. A lot of worlds are game-based worlds where you're going around first-person shooting things. Ours, you land on the deck of a boat and there's a door and you walk in and you're in a theater. And there's posters on the wall in the lobby showing you what classes and shows are there, and you look around and you find your seat. And in a lot of ways, it's, people expect more of an explanation than there really is. A comic once came in and was like, okay, so how does it work? You get on stage and it's like you get on stage, you look at the audience and you tell them jokes and they laugh. It's what you're used to. And they say, okay, yeah. But it just feels like it must be different. But like I said, true to the philosophy, we're trying to make it so that you have that almost surreal twist on it. You can do magic above and beyond reality, but we want it to be familiar. We want to have the same kind of cues, the same kind of format of a show, so that people know how to respond and have the best experience that has been tried and true for a long time in the physical world. I say physical world instead of real life because I do feel, even though it's clunky phrase, the experiences are there in the VR are real, and the laughs are real, and the relationships are real, and the experience that's being created is real. So I'm always tempted to refer to the physical world as the physical world and not real life.
So you're literally booting people into the Matrix, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much rich opportunities to explore there. Like you can literally offer them a red pill or a blue pill, that's really funny. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it would actually be really hilarious if they picked the pill and then got transported to a different reality, and that's where the jokes start.
I mean, if they take the blue pill, you can start playing Rick Astley's "Never Gonna Give You Up," Rickroll them. No, but yeah, that's really cool. So are you guys like fully in the Facebook metaverse? Where they don't have legs? That one.
So I'm in that one, although legs have come out since.
They've got legs now.
Yeah, okay, awesome. A few months ago now. Yeah. I used to joke that it was amazing that people were really frustrated about the legs, considering how rarely they use them in today's day and age anyway.
For somebody who's not got any experience in the VR world, I would love for you to tell me what you're talking about.
Sure. So to take a step back, whenever you're entering your virtual world, as with, I guess, a Bitmoji, there's an avatar aspect of it. You get into virtual reality, and the first thing you do, regardless of the platform you're in, is you're creating an avatar associated with that platform. And people either model them after themselves or they go to something completely different. But usually people model them after themselves. They know what they know. The comics often comment on how they readapted their own physical flaws, and they're not sure why they did it with their avatar. But I think it's a spirit of authenticity there. So you go in, and then when you're in these virtual worlds, you're seeing other people's avatars, and you're basically a cartoon talking to other cartoons that will get more realistic as time goes by. But this particular app, this Horizon Worlds app by Meta, you were choosing where your avatar looked, but you didn't actually have legs. I think they were saving on processor power, so you had this sort of torso kind of walking around, which cut away from the immersive experience to some extent, as you could potentially imagine. I will say that, again, now that they have legs, it's a bit of an automatically generated thing. It does predictive leg calculations, I think, through some AI technology based on how your arms and shoulders are being tracked. But I'll add, again, that that VR chat platform that was PC enabled, that's more advanced, that's less of an every person platform. There's technology there for full body tracking that has existed for years, where people set up sensor base stations, and they have really every detail of their physical movement is fully captured in their avatar. Not necessarily facial expressions quite yet. That's still coming along, depending on the platform, but their whole bodies are there, and they'll even sit in front of a mirror and just look at themselves and just do minute movements and stare at their avatar, exact equivalent of themselves. So yeah, the whole avatar thing is interesting. In Horizon Worlds, in particular, they're very humanoid. That's one of the reasons why we chose that platform. They're still humanoid cartoons, even though they didn't have legs and now they do. We felt like that would add to the experience. That VR chat application, it's everything. It's you can be a tiny hot dog delivering jokes to Sonic the Hedgehog. You have furries all over the place. It's a much more open, expressive environment where you can sort of design whatever avatar you want and be whatever you want if you have the right tools, as opposed to Horizon Worlds, which has an avatar generator tool that is within these humanoid constraints, which is a stylistic choice based on the market they were going after, and we felt like that was a suitable start for us, although we are expanding into VR chat soon.
Yeah, so I mean, anyone could be whatever they want to be, I guess, in this case. But you mentioned a lot of different things. I'm just wondering, how much would it cost for someone to go from the simplest thing to the most expensive thing? And I think Nabil also had a question. So after this, Nabil, please go ahead.
Sure. So I'd say there is like a proportionality between the level of technology that you have and at least especially the visual component of the experience that you get. So I mentioned that we focused on the Quest platform and Meta's metaverse. And part of the reason why we did that, as I mentioned, is that you don't need a PC, and you have this what's called untethered version of the headset. So the Quest 1 came out and it did well, but then the Quest 2 came out and that really jump-started things. And I think there's 15 or 20 million Quest 2s sold, and they were running at about $400 or $500 US for a while, depending on the size of the hard drive that you want, depending on how many apps you want, how much you want to record on your headset. And that was the most affordable headset at the time. And then the Quest 3 came out last November, I believe, and that drove the price of the Quest 2 down a lot more and made it a lot more accessible, to the point where it's about $250, $300 US, the 300-400 Canadian, with a really active aftermarket. It's very easy to pick up a headset. People buy it, they maybe don't like it, and then they're available for sale. So you can really, just for a couple $100, you can get into it. And our classes and shows and the Horizon Worlds app in particular are all free. We're working towards ticketed events for more elaborate experiences, but for now we're doing pro shows, stand-up comedy classes with qualified educators, and numerous other events, all for free. So after that couple of $100 outlay, you're pretty much good to go. But to finish answer your question, on the high end, if you did have a very powerful PC and it was hooked up to a very powerful headset, more powerful than the Quest, then you could end up with a much more graphically interesting experience that's higher frame rates and with all better bells and whistles, that there are even some worlds that without a more advanced computer you can't even get into them. But that's not our approach. But then at that point, you're talking thousands of dollars. PCs that cost thousands of dollars, headsets that cost at least $1,000. The Apple Vision Pro that's coming out, Apple's headsets releasing on the 2nd of February, coming soon. That's $3,500 US. And is not in the same ecosystem. It's Apple, so it's an ecosystem unto itself. But then you're looking at 10 times the cost for its take on the experience. But for us, that Quest platform is the key, and especially with that Quest 3 coming out, there are a lot of people buying Quest 2s. I have had 2 friends that just recently bought Quest 2s to participate in our experiences, even though the Quest 3 came out, just because it's a more affordable and easier point of entry into the technology at all. It's a real, it's that Apple iPhone 1 moment when the iPhone 2 came out, and now everybody can get an iPhone 1, and the early adopter phase is over, and now it's everywhere. And that first rush that set the stage is past, and now we're starting to get into the early stages of the more ubiquitous phase that should bode well for us.
I think this is an excellent time to also ask you to tell us a little more on how to get access to your platform specifically. Also, I want to remind people to subscribe and follow us as well. But yeah, Simon, tell us about your platform.
Yeah, thanks. So we exist in a few different places, let's say. We have a website like anybody else. We're at unknowntheater.world. Theater spelled the American way, but getting to a largely American audience, even though we're a Canadian-based theater, because that's who's been showing up and makes up the majority of the platform. From there, you can easily access our Discord. unknowntheater.world/Discord is the URL. In December of 2022, we launched that community. So the community is about a year old. We've got just over 600 or so members and new people every day, and that's the place where all of our events are listed. The detailed calendar that adapts to current conditions. That's the best way to see what shows and classes are available, with chat channels for each show and a way to interact with the staff and the other audience members and the crew. Beyond that, if people don't have Discord, or that's a bit of a friction barrier to entry, we do have YouTube channels, Twitch channel, Instagram, Facebook, where we stream all of our shows. Facebook's a little bit more where we started our community, but really Discord was a much more enriching place to have more meaningful interactions with our community than Facebook could allow. But if you don't want to bother with any of that, if you just had the virtual reality headset, again, has to be the Oculus headset for where we are currently, either the Quest 2, Quest 3, or Quest Pro. All you have to do is download Horizon Worlds from the App Store, which is free, and then you just look up the Unknown Theater as a world, so you could do once you've created your avatar and gone through the tutorial, and just show up when we have our shows, and that's all you need to do.
That's awesome. A fellow .world domain user.
You got one too.
we have an affinity with you guys because we're Cambrian-Explosion.world.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's really cool because obviously you said it's free, so definitely why not check it out, right? So
and stand-up comedy classes are expensive if you try them in the physical world.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not cheap, and people have we have a student who helps us out a lot. He volunteers. We have about a dozen volunteers who help out, and I remember I was overhearing a conversation where someone said, "Hey, are you paid for this? How come you're doing all this stuff?" He goes, "I looked up what stand-up comedy classes cost. I'm paid in free classes, so this is fine for me. This is appropriate." And I was like, "Thanks, man."
Yeah, that's a smart.
I do appreciate it.
That's a smart student. Yeah.
I actually had a bit of a deeper question. So, earlier you said, avatars, people can be whoever they want to be. And I think nowadays that's such an interesting topic because of some of the challenges we're having in the world. People can be themselves. They can come into the virtual world, do what they want. And what brought to my mind is just the opportunity for entrepreneurs and people. We had crypto that came up several years ago, and that was another currency. So I'm just wondering, in the virtual world, just based on your opinion, there's a whole new market for entrepreneurs and for people to just sort of make money with getting people to be whoever they want to be online, and just you mentioned as well the cost for various different things. So I'm just wondering what your opinion on that is, in terms of what can entrepreneurs do with the virtual world, and what does that currency look like in the VR world?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely an early time period for this. I think there was that, we saw that rush of metaverse business stuff that got sort of extinguished in favor of AI. I think part of how, it didn't fully crash, but still crumbled a fair bit was because people weren't quite sure how to use it quite yet, and the adoption wasn't quite there quite yet. big companies are doing often the digital twin, I think is a term you may come across, where they'll make it so that there's a way to interact with a company's products and services in a virtual way. I think it really depends on the kind of business, and some businesses are going to be much more suitable and appropriate than others. For example, there are fashion brands that are partnered with Meta right now that you can, from the avatar, clothing store, you can spend $10 on a designer suit that you can get in the physical world, and then have a chance to, experience that, version of that product in a virtual environment. I think for anything that involves any kind of personal consultation or human-to-human interaction that is currently online, going to VR to me seems like a really natural step to take. We had someone who did counseling for his business, and he approached us to see if he can do some counseling out of our place. He did a show to try to he did a session on advice for relationships on our stage, is to try to put something that was appropriate to a theater. But still, he saw the opportunity to be in there and have something that was a little bit more personally connected than something like a Zoom call. Again, I feel like there's open creativity depending on the kind of business that it is, and to degree to which a virtual representation can suit it. But it's not for everyone, and I feel like it's not necessarily worth the. I think there's a fad element which could be a red herring to some people, but also what I like about it is there's an extra still interest in and of itself, where just because of the nature of the campaign, the fact that it is a virtual reality marketing campaign or business move has a bit of extra intrigue to it that I think could actually, because it's so new, has a bit of an extra layer to it. I'm assuming that maybe I'm biased that it's not negatively tainted by how the metaverse hype went. But yeah, if a business is like, hey, check out our virtual thing, I think it's an excuse for another story. It shows at least an attempt or spirit of innovation for a business, and that they're willing to embrace a new technology. So I think there's opportunity, but yeah, it has to be thought through and not just done to get on a hype train.
What are some of the big challenges that you have faced in your journey so far? I know we've had some discussions earlier about challenges, so I'd love to hear what are some challenges you faced.
Sure. Well, sometimes it's easy to take stable physics for granted. Space and time being consistent things in the physical world are suddenly no longer consistent things. Being in a virtual space and suddenly they can't hear you and you can't hear them, and you're wondering why you're on mute. Let's say, for example, in a virtual world, is there a bug with the headset? Did I set something wrong? There are, it's technology, so there are bugs, and new technology has that many more bugs. And so we have faced everything from comics avatars being, for some reason, all extremely, extremely dark-skinned, so it looks like every white person's in blackface. We have had avatars facing one direction when they think they're facing another direction. So in order to talk to the audience, they have to be backwards. We have had avatars show up invisible, which is funny when you see a floating microphone for about a minute, and then you're kind of hoping to see the comic, and an invisible heckler is really tough to deal with. So that's just a smattering of the kinds of technological bugs.
And of course, you lived through the days of having no legs.
Yes, which was quite mocked.
Yeah.
Generally, we've had our own challenges with Horizon Worlds as a platform, where we're, at the end of the day, we're subject to Meta's changing app rules and what they decide to promote, what features they decide to allow or deprecate, however much we've grown to depend on them. So that gap, again, not only just having an unstable bug-filled metaphysics, but a metaphysics that can be controlled by the gods of said metaphysics at any moment, as you have a show scheduled. So those are some of the challenges. But even just onboarding people, getting them used to the technology, it's as accessible as it's ever been, but it's still it's still friction that we're
Right.
tightening.
Even on video conferencing calls, there's always so much trouble with getting people into set up properly with the technology. So I can't even I can imagine that with VR, it's a level beyond that.
Well, oftentimes the stand-up comics that are performing on our Thursday show, which is our pro show, it's the flagship show we launched with. We've since added open mics and classes and improv and sketch and all these other things. But that pro show on Thursdays is really our flagship thing. And oftentimes these professional comics that we bring in from the outside world, their first virtual reality experience is on our stage. And so they're like, okay, this is strange. And we're like, settle in, tell some jokes. But it's a bit overwhelming at first. But actually seeing that, having the audience that actually knows VR pretty well watch them adds an extra layer of something compelling to it as they're adapting to the technology and saying like, where are my legs? At least when there were no legs, and exploring and being creative. And we've had comics that have been, comics for 20 years, and they get in there and it feels new to them. And they are like, they say, why am I nervous? This is weird. I shouldn't be nervous. And we're like, and that's part of what we're offering is not only an audience experience, but an experience for stand-up comics who are getting to reach audiences from around the world from home, reach audiences that haven't seen them every week or without performing in front of comics that they have, there's politics around their community. It's a chance for just to get on stage more and not have to have a drink alcohol while you're out or have a commute home. It's like there's benefits for them too, but I digress.
I mean, you could have a virtual drink and the benefit is that you don't get drunk.
And we do. We actually have an after party, an after show spot, a lounge spot that's below deck on our boat with virtual drinks that create virtual effects.
Okay.
That's hilarious.
Cool.
I actually had a fun question. I wanted to tap deeper into your inner improv comedian, since we're on the topic of challenges with VR. How would you convince Oppenheimer to attend one of your shows or to go into VR? And would you be worried about introducing Oppenheimer to VR?
In particular?
Yes, Oppenheimer in particular. It's, the improv sort of statement, tell me about this.
I feel very positive about the experiences that come out of VR. Why do you ask about Oppenheimer in particular?
Well, I don't know. I just thought it would be interesting. It's trending right now, right? That movie a few months ago. So I'm just wondering, how would we convince someone who isn't part of our time, Oppenheimer, Albert Einstein? How would you convince them to invest in a technology like this? Because I think a lot of us, whichever age we come from, it's something very new. It's a technology that's very new. So I guess the question is, how would you convince them to invest in something?
It is really challenging because I wasn't kidding before when really there is very much an element of trying to tell someone what the Matrix is, and they really, and as much as you can say, but it's like, imagine it's like real life, but you're there. It doesn't work. And we have an advertisement that's been running on Facebook for months now with a few hundred emojis on it that advertises our open mic, says, have you ever wanted to try stand up in VR? And the number of people that message us and say, I'm interested, and we say, do you have a VR headset? And they say, no. And we say, you didn't get it, because it's so hard to wrap their head around. I feel like it would be incredibly challenging to have them get it without sticking them in it. So I would probably sneak up behind Oppenheimer and throw the headset on his head and watch him freak out. But I think one of the, depending on his life circumstances, I may sell it through that. So, we've had people come after the show and say, I really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you, because I live in the middle of nowhere. It would take me 2 hours to get to an open mic show if I even wanted to make that kind of effort. And now you've made it possible for me to have something pretty damn close from where I live. And if they felt socially isolated to some extent, or physically isolated, or they're stuck at home with the kids, or maybe they're not feeling well, and I said, are you looking for some entertainment from home? And maybe try to, or a way to meet people, or, I try to sell the benefits around the limitations of their current circumstances.
It's funny
personal
because
circumstances.
the concept of virtual reality, cyberspace is not new, right? It's like I'm sure that a
Lawnmower
lot of
Man.
people, Lawnmower Man. I mean, William Gibson, right, American Canadian science fiction writer, created the term cyberspace in 1982. And we have cyberspace and meat space. We have so many of popular in pop culture. No, these cyber worlds. There was one that was pretty fun. Ready Player One, that was pretty fun recently. But it's always kind of a technology that's looming in the wings and not never quite here in mass uh, consumer electronic space. But now it looks like it's finally about to be like a mass consumer electronics technology. So really
Well,
exciting time.
yeah, and it bodes really well for us. We're in early and trying to scoop up this early audience, but as it again becomes more ubiquitous, that should only work in our favor. I will give a plug to this other metaverse called RP1, which is named after, I think, Ready Player One. That is one of the ways it's trying to solve this technological problem is, and to tie into the earlier business question, you have businesses that want to maybe create a virtual digital twin, like I said, but where should they do it? Should they do it in VR chat? Should they do it in Horizon Worlds? And this platform, RP1, is trying to create basically a web protocol integration for virtual reality. So instead of having to go into this app to visit this place, you'd go to like basically equivalent of like an IP address, and it would use web XR technology to have it be cross-platform, so make it even more available to everyone. They're still early on, but they're trying to develop their protocols to sit on top of the current internet's web protocol, so that it can be even that much more adopted. But again, as these headsets get more and more purchased, and then hopefully the effect of Apple getting into the game will just make this more and more common and less strange. And it's still new in the comedy world too.
Yeah, I think as you said, WebXR and these open standards, web standards need to be more kind of supported, and that's when interoperability, and that's I think when it will really take off, when you have interoperability.
Yeah, right. Because right now you have a bunch of, in a way, sort of a series of walled gardens, and it's hard to
Exactly.
to really get somewhere. But as time goes on, I think we're going to see more and more headsets being purchased. I think they're going to drop in price even further, and it's going to be just like very few people have 3D printers, and probably eventually everyone's going to have a 3D printer. I feel like that's going to change. I feel like those web protocols are going to change. The avatars are going to change too. Right now, again, you have these very cartoony avatars, but I don't know if you've seen, there was a Lex Friedman interview with Mark Zuckerberg where they had these avatars that were photorealistic, basically trying to read the facial expressions, convert them into virtual, and then show that projected virtual image in front of you. And I feel like it'll be interesting to see how that affects things like comedy and people's social interactions, where you're in this weird middle stage now where you can hide your real self behind this cartoony image. And when it becomes possible to have your real self fully in virtual reality, that might be a strange time where now people are forced to now lose that extra layer of desired obscurity that they could now hide behind. So, but for us, I mean, if we could get an immersive environment where you're feeling like you're in a real space and seeing the real fully rendered person there in front of you, I think that's great. And because already the experience is great as cartoons, I can only imagine that as they get more photorealistic, that'll bode even better.
And on that note, I think the real sad story is, I think we haven't met aliens. They've developed VR technology, and they are least bothered with coming to the real world. I think.
Well, I mean, there's a pretty good argument to be made that we're all living in a simulation that's inside another simulation, inside another simulation,
I
that
know.
goes all the way to the top.
So what's another
and
layer?
the aliens created it, and
Exactly. Well, yeah, exactly.
I think this was a fascinating discussion. I hope that our listeners will go try out VR technology and what this entails in terms of the experience, what this entails in terms of the future that it's bringing. Tell us what you think about this episode. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we will be having some more episodes coming for you soon. Take care.
Peace
Bye-bye.
out.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.